Hello, gentlemen. Good to see you guys for another episode here of the Blind Pig, courtesy of BGObsession.com. The foursome together tonight to live in some sorrow and maybe talk about some positives. But before we get started, we'll start with the intros. Top left is Mark. He hails as Ohm. Bottom left is John. He hails as Boone. Bottom right is Paul. You can find him as Canadian Hog. And my name is Derek. You can find me at Silent Threat. So that's all BGO names on the board. Come by, hang out, mix it up. Let's have some fun. So,
By the way, Derek is
guys,
threatening to change his username.
I am threatening to change my username. It's been on them, tabled it. I'm thinking about it. I don't know. Silent Threat doesn't really have any ties to the team, but then again, my new name probably wouldn't anyway. So I'm going back and forth. I've been Silent Threat for 14 years now. It's kind of hard to change that.
Yeah, and you don't want to do something like Commander Rex or
No,
whatever.
God, no. No, no, no. It would be
Hey,
something more.
if we end up as the Washington Wolves, I'm calling the Wolfman right now. That's
The
mine.
Wolfman. Now that would mean that a lot of people would probably adjust their board name if depending on what the new name is, if we actually like it. So Miami guys.
Woo.
It
John,
seems like
let's
a long time ago, right?
it does seem like a long time ago. I guess I kind of want to follow John's suit and just say what are some things that you guys liked from the game before we just turn this into a complete complaint fest.
I only had two. I had that I did like, and they're really related to the same thing. I did like that we rushed the ball, even though it would have been
Mhm.
easy to throw it 60 times in that game. We actually ran more than we passed. And I liked that we outrushed the Dolphins as a result of that. Not by a lot, but we did win the rushing battle. That's about the only thing we won. And then I got a whole bunch of dislikes, but why don't we hit the likes first?
What'd you
Paul, how
like,
about you?
Derek? Oh, sorry.
I tried to obviously erase that game from my mind, because it was quite ugly right from the get-go. But I mean, one of the things that just stood out and reminded me that, there's a reason why I'm watching, and it's Sam Howell. I noticed that there are a few occasions in that game that he was able to make some plays with his feet, do some things off script, and make some pretty impressive plays and throws at times in that game. And again, it just reminded me he's basically the reason why I'm watching, the rest of this string here, and gives me a little bit of optimism for the future. So I was quite impressed with his ability to make some of those off script throws and plays and just add a little bit of excitement and flair to the game, which we're severely lacking.
Yeah, that's fair, and that's probably about the only thing that I would be able to say that I actually liked was I no matter how well it's going or badly it's going, I like the way he carries himself on the field and nothing. I mean, I think he'd be the same if we were up 45-10 or down 45-10. I really do. And I really do. That's becoming a disease to say that. But what I'm finding now is every time I think of something I like in the last 2 or 3 games, if I flip it around and look at it from the other side, I dislike it for a different reason. Specifically, I liked that as awful as the defense performed in terms of giving up big play after big play after big play, and I think we gave up scores on 6 of 9 possessions that the Dolphins had. That said, there were a couple of times early in the game, Derek and I were talking about this before we started, where Ron Rivera's debut as DC with no time to prepare and then prepare for the best offense in football looked like a defense a few times. They looked aggressive. We saw activity from the linebackers, which is not something that we see around here very often. And it looked like, okay, I could see that there might be a defense there. And then I looked at it from the other side and thought, on the other hand, we're 12 weeks into a lost season. And now we are making a change that might affect how the defense plays. It's like, I'm not sure what good it did to see that now. And it just, again, reminded me of what a disastrous year it's been in terms of the coaching of this team on both sides of the ball, and a head coach who was disengaged. And put us in the position we're in. So I guess that was more of a dislike than a like.
Yes.
But it started with liking what I saw early from the defense, you know.
And
Yeah.
anything you like, Derek?
Well, to piggyback on Mark's point, there were a couple flashes in this. There were a couple sequences. I think it was 2 series that this defense, it was different than any defense we had seen pretty much all season. Jamin Davis had a pretty quality tackle for loss. I think KJ Henry had a sack or pressure, forcing Tua to throw the ball errantly out of bounds or away. I mean, there was aggression on defense, and it was aggression we had not seen, and we haven't seen consistently from this defense under Jack Del Rio. Now, am I saying that Ron Rivera's like fixed something? No, I still question his ability to coach, but it was a flash of something to say, hey, look, these guys, they're not dead, and there is there's ability there. Something we have gone back and forth on the board about. And John, you made a comment today that you could count on one hand how many guys are viable starters on this defense, and you wouldn't even fill up your whole hand.
with the caveat that we could be shocked at how much better some of these guys, the ones that do hang around, how much better they play when it's not this coaching staff.
Yep.
That remains to be seen. So I did not like that. The Dolphins had almost double the total offensive yards that we did. That was because we just couldn't let that happen, and we couldn't seem to stop it. We lost the time of possession battle, something that we've actually been pretty decent at this season. 3 of 4 drives in the second and third quarter of that span, 3 of 4 drives ended in touchdowns. That would really put the kibosh on any hopes of maybe coming back in the game. We allowed Miami to hold the ball for 11 minutes in the fourth quarter. We gave up 24 first half points, and that's not including the pick 6, by the way. I took that out because I didn't blame the defense for that. And then we had probably the most disappointing thing to me was that we had no turnovers. We had no turnovers of any kind. We did not force any turnovers. Let me put it that way. So, and you just can't beat a team like Miami if there was even a mathematical chance that we were going to pull off an upset, but you can't do it if you cannot sustain drives. You can't stop the other team when they're driving, and you can't turn the ball over. You just have no chance. And that's what happened, basically. Much better team than we are. And I've seen Tua play some bad games, but that was not one of them. He was very efficient and, accurate with the ball. And
he just looked so comfortable out there, right? We're not a hard team to quarterback against because I don't know, we don't apply a whole lot of pressure. Have any of you seen the in-season Hard Knocks with the Miami Dolphins by any chance?
Mm-hmm.
Here's my big dislike, and I could spend half an hour talking about the episode. The second episode of the season was our game, and it was a chance to see the outside perspective of what the hell our team really looks like these days in the eyes of going against an NFL team that's got it going on. The things that jumped out at me that I wanted to mention was the one good thing in all of it was when McDaniel is making his opening remarks to his team early in the week, and he's talking about the team they're going to play. He's not disrespectful, but he essentially boils it down to the one thing they have going for him is a quarterback who's a baller who runs around making plays. He had not much to say about the scheme we run or anything else. He said what they have going is they got a guy who's a baller who'll come at you and run around and make plays on you. If you take care of that and control that, you'll be fine. Other than that, it was just watching this. We were the other team. We were the Washington Generals against the Globetrotters in that whole production. And that's, is a pretty accurate representation of what we've become.
Yeah. And their wide receiver coach, it's Welker, right?
Yep.
Called a shot. He said, Reek, if it's man-to-man coverage, it's like stealing. And then the third play of the game, man-to-man. one-on-one, and he just blew by him. I mean, if I can certainly tell you that the four of us saw that coming. It's, like they're going
And
to look
here's
for a man.
Eric, I want to ask
uh,
you a question because related to that specifically, because I think a lot of people would come back with, well, it's Tyreek Hill. I mean, there's no other defensive back that can cover that guy. But I think what it kind of shows you, and we were talking again, where maybe we'll talk about it later tonight about who would we want to keep, or who do we have questions about, and we want to determine over the next 4 games, whether they're going to be here next year or not. But we just don't have a defensive back that can cover number 1 wide receivers consistently. And I mean, even if you don't have that true star cornerback, you at least need a guy that once in a while breaks a pass up or doesn't get beat on a post pattern. And we do not have that. And I know people try to tell me Kendall Fuller is not. Maybe when he was 23, he could be that guy, but he's 28, going on 29, and I don't know, I think he's lost a step. We just don't have that. We don't have the alpha male at corner to match up with the scary wide receivers in the NFL. The CeeDee Lambs, and we've seen a lot of them, right, this year. And we had
you
just
want to hear something.
Anybody named Moore?
Well, here, to your point, John, and I'm not going to sit here and say we have an alpha dog shutdown corner. We don't. I agree with you. But you want to take a wild guess at where Benjamin St-Juste ranks in passes defensed in the NFL?
Yeah, he's up there.
He's tied for 4th with 15 pass breakups. Now, how many times do you look up and he's behind a guy as he's streaking down the side? I get it. So, but to the original point you were making about Tyreek Hill, yeah, it's Tyreek Hill, but we all knew it was Tyreek Hill. At some point, you got to say,
there's no scheme. Hey, there's nothing.
Right. At some point, you got to say, Carl, I don't care what you're doing. Whatever side of the field he's on, you're on, and you guys are bracketing coverage, you're doubling, you're doing something. If Waddle beats you, Waddle beats you. What you can't do is let Tyreek Hill get behind you, because guess what will happen? Then you'll definitely lose. He got covered. I listened to a stat. It was only man.
I mean, for God's sake, isn't that what you're supposed to do when you're an inferior player and you're beat? Foul the guy. I mean, for God's sake.
Hold him. Something.
According
I heard something. There was like five plays, defensive snaps that were man to man, and 2 of them, if I'm not mistaken, were touchdowns by Tyreek Hill, and they were both of the big ones, obviously.
On the on that first or third play of the game, Logan Paulson may or may not be right, but he says he did not think it was on the corner. He didn't think it was supposed to be straight man. He thought that Cam Curl was late coming over, that he should have been able to pick up that on that. So he was hesitating to blame whichever corner was on him. I've already tried to block that out of my memory. But the larger point, John, is 100% right. We can't run matchup man stuff because we don't have those guys. That's not who we are. And you can't do that when you don't run the passer anyway, right? Even teams with good cover corners rush the passer with 4. We don't need that.
And the most maddening part about everything that you're saying, Mark and John, to what you were mentioning as well, we tried to address that in the draft. We used our first 2 picks on defensive backs, and nothing is materializing. I mean, it's so maddening and frustrating in that regard, because you wanted to be able to match up against these teams, defend the pass, and we've gotten nothing out of those first 2 picks. It's really depressing.
Yep.
So that was our likes and don't likes. There wasn't much to like about that game. Let's face it, right? I mean, you're really reaching if you're trying to pull something good out of a team losing at home 45-10. And it probably wasn't that close.
And doing it exactly how we expected it to go down. Like,
it's kind of sad though, in a game where, Sam Howell, he had his moments, but really, I mean, you only throw it like 20 sometimes, 23 times. I think he threw something like that.
23,
12 of 23, and he's the highlight, right? That, like, normally we would be talking about, they got to give Sam the ball more, or they got to, but in that game, that was the highlight. Anyway, are we done with the Dolphins?
Yeah, we're done with the
I
Dolphins.
want to
Oh,
I
sorry.
want to add one other like, and I'm really like grasping at straws with this one. It has nothing to do with anything that happened on the field on Sunday. But what caught my attention was Terry McLaurin's response, I believe, in the post-game interviews and whatnot, because as we all know, he finished that game with no catches. And I thought it would have been really, really easy for him, to be that guy who has a little bit of an outburst to express his disappointment. I mean, the most that we got out of him was, "Oh, I got a lot of cardio today." That was his clip. That was what came out of his mouth. I thought he showed a lot of character, not throwing anybody under the bus. He showed a lot of class to me. In what is a really, really difficult season, it can be really easy for guys to start showing that frustration, letting that frustration out. I thought he tried his hardest not to do it. And, it just reminded me that we have a true character guy in him. And we all knew that to begin with. But I don't know. I think it's just a testament to the type of guy that he is. So to me, that was
Paul,
a bit of a positive.
I'm glad you brought that up because I wanted to read a couple of quotes from John Allen. And if you've already heard this, forgive me, but I just thought it was in stark contrast to what Paul's describing from Terry. Here's what Jonathan Allen said after the game on how tough the loss was today. It's what you would expect. On what needs to change? That's a great question. I have no idea. On the defensive performance today, wasn't a very good defense. Can't stop the run, can't stop the pass. And then the last one was on if the adversity is a good gauge of the locker room character. Yeah, I've been dealing with this for 7 years. I'm tired of trying to build character. My character's been built up enough. I'm trying to win. So anyway, I thought those were pretty seriously, I don't know. I don't want to say negative, but he wasn't mincing words. I don't know what that means. But
And coming from a guy who's your leader, who's a pretty big leader on the team, I mean, that's
yeah,
he's getting he's been speaking out a lot, and maybe it's warranted, and maybe he's the voice of the locker room guy.
and it's hard for me to get mad at any of these players because he probably does, just like with us. The more you want to win as a Washington fan, the more snarky you are, right? I mean, the more it bothers you. So I can't really fault him for making those comments. I wanted to ask a question before we move on to other things that you alluded to, I think, Derek, that it was Mark, sorry, that they released Danny Johnson today, because I thought it was kind of an odd move, especially this late in the season, especially when Danny Johnson's kind of been the corner that they brought in, when all the other guys are unavailable, and he's done a pretty good job. I mean, they brought him up to the active roster probably like 3 or 4 times in the last couple of years. And to me, I mean, I don't know that he's part of the answer in the defensive backfield, but to me, he's always been kind of a gamer, kind of a guy, and probably plays above his talent level. But I just had a question. I wonder, because it doesn't really make a lot of impact right now, and we're dinged up in the defensive backfield, do you guys think maybe we're going to start to see guys getting cut, like as a precursor to the offseason? Like if someone behind the scenes has decided that these guys aren't part of the future, that they're just going to start hacking away at the perimeter before we even get to the offseason?
Well, just to add, did you see that we claimed a cornerback off waivers from Green Bay?
I did not see that.
Yeah. So
you think that was just to make room?
Yeah, Q Blue Kelly, I think is how you pronounce his name, claimed him off of waivers. I looked into him a little bit. 22 years old, 5th round pick by the Ravens. Got waived by the Ravens because he had a really bad preseason. Ended up getting claimed by Seattle. who waived him a month later. He got claimed by Green Bay, who waived him. He got claimed by Green Bay on November 15th, 13th, and then 15th, and then he got waived today by Green Bay. So
It's hard
I
to
think
Sounds like our kind of a guy.
it's
I
hard to
think-
see any real short-term benefit of doing this. So what that
Yeah.
says to me is there's probably that there may be something going on with Danny Johnson. He may have requested to be let go. Maybe that it's whether it leads, if this starts happening like a lot, that will be interesting if they start releasing other players, because it will suggest very strongly that there's some other forces at work other than our current brain trust.
Yep, that's where I was going with that.
But I'd like to hear more about, I mean, we're not going to hear anything right away, but it'd be nice to know if there was something with Danny, if he mutual agreement, he asked to be released, something else. And this other kid, I mean, I don't expect he's going to be doing a whole lot of playing between now and the end of the season.
No,
So
and
it's a
it
strange
doesn't
thing for
seem
him.
it doesn't seem like a move you make to improve your roster, right? I mean,
well,
Danny
that's
Johnson
the thing
is what it is, but he's played and he's played well at times.
Chris on the board said maybe Eugene Shen was involved. Like there's some sort of analytic thing here that he's seeing that maybe this is a decision that they said, all right, well, and you know, Shen's been around. Maybe he said, no, this is a guy that has the ability to develop, and he was a guy who knows? I don't know. I'm speculating because it doesn't make sense to add a guy 4 weeks before the end of the season when you're going to turn your entire roster over for the most part.
Well, Danny had like a contract that actually had a little bit of money on it, right?
2
Were you
years,
saving a little bit of
2.75, I think.
Yeah, and this kid that we brought in, I suspect, is on a minimum rookie type contract. Yeah,
I would imagine so.
without
Yeah.
any cap hits. So until we hear more, it's hard to really know. But it seems like a strange move, and I feel bad for Johnson if he didn't want this, and I kind of feel bad for the kid from Green Bay, whose team is relevant and going somewhere, and he's coming here to sit on the bench for a month. But
Well, he was getting cut anyway.
oh, was he? Okay.
Yeah, he was waived. He got released by
right.
Green Bay.
I didn't hear that part.
So we claimed him off of waivers. So that's why another reason why it's kind of
and both things there could be a little of both going on. They may be like trying to start to weed out the guys that aren't going to be part of the future, and then they see this other, and they're not necessarily like, let's do this to acquire this player. It could just be, yeah, let's go ahead and grab that guy off the.
Wouldn't you love to be able to track the conversations out at Ashburn over something like this? It's like, who exactly is talking to who and making that final decision? It's a fascinating time out there.
So I heard I listened to Galdi and Sheehan this morning, so I apologize because I'm not going to attribute the right guy if I try to, which one said it, but somebody was talking about the fact that apparently Josh Harris has his person at the park has been Marty Herney.
I heard the same thing.
That probably because Herney's been around forever. I think he had like relationships with Charlie Casserly back in the day. But anyway, it sounds like that's the guy that Harris is talking to about the football related stuff. Anyway, I thought it was.
Well, you start to wonder how much Herney and Mayhew have actually done. You know what I mean? Like everything you see is Rivera related. Even there was that draft clip when we got Forbes. If you watch, like Martin Mayhew's on the phone with somebody, and I believe that it came out later. It was the Patriots, right? But he's like, oh, let me run it by the boss, and then he's like, Ron, blah blah blah. This is what they're offering. Okay, let me call him back. And it's like even those guys they're not doing anything. Well, they're doing things, but they're not actually. They have no power over anything. So
yeah,
like
there were also. Sorry, Mark. Go ahead.
I'll just say it's like the guy at the auto place that you're dealing with. Well, let me go talk to my manager and see if we can do something.
Yeah, the salesman.
Well, Mayhew, I believe, said after this particular draft, we wanted to be more aggressive, which I took that to mean, but Ron wouldn't let us be. I may be reading into that, but that's kind of the vibe that I got after the draft.
This seems like a good time to do this. We'll definitely get back to the Rams, right? But let's dig in just a little bit on what we're actually going to be looking at for the rest of the season, right? We're in autopsy mode, right? We're real-time autopsying the 2023 season and the Snyder era and the Rivera era. It's fascinating to me what the locker room must be like, who's being a professional, what players and coaches are still getting it done, and what this means heading into the off season. I mean, you got to expect that the players who are not locks to be hired somewhere, right? They get released here, they know they're going to get picked up somewhere else. They have one mindset. There's all the guys who are borderline on our team and who just want to stay on a roster, who are going to be playing their asses off for the rest of the year to try to put something on film, say, I'm here, I'm under contract, keep me around. I haven't looked at contracts of any of you guys to see who is like playing here to try to get an extension and that kind of thing. And that's separate from the players that we think we'd like to keep, right? And that's a whole different conversation because we don't know what kind of team we're going to have and who's going to be coaching it and all that. I'd just love to hear your thoughts on where all that is.
I kind of looked at it today as far as players. I didn't really look at players like McLaurin and Allen. Yeah, anybody's could be on the chopping or on the trade block, right? With a whole new crew. I kind of looked at who are the guys who we still aren't sure about. And some of them might be rookies and some of them might be on year 3 and we still aren't sure about them. And so I talked about on offense, I looked at guys like Bates and Turner, because I kind of feel like if Bates had in a more of just a better offensive scheme, Bates has some skills. Like I'm not sure that he can't play pretty well. He just doesn't get many opportunities. Turner, I don't know about. De'Ami Brown is another guy. I mean, he's got that.
I'm about ready to cut ties with De'Ami Brown.
Yeah, I hear you. But Dotson, I think, has called himself into question a little bit this year. Chris Rodriguez, to me, I'd be handing him the ball about half the time right now. But of course, the coaches have no incentive to, to do the research for the incoming successors. But I would really like to see what he could do with more balls. And then Alex Armah is another guy that is kind of an intriguing player, but I don't really know. None of those guys I listed, except I'll grant you, Diami's he's probably proven his case. And then on defense, I wrote down Casey Toohill, KJ Henry, Kaliki Hudson, Quan Martin, St. Juste. St. Juste probably has done enough to want to, that you don't have too many questions about him. And then Cam Curl and Percy Butler. Cam Curl's another one that we probably, depending on the money, if we are able to sign him, he's back almost automatically. But Percy Butler's another guy who's been like a special teams demon, but I don't know. I mean, he's had flashes and then he's had terrible plays. So I don't know what to make of him. But anyway.
What do you got, Paul?
I want to follow up on something that John was saying, because when we were originally alerted about this possible topic, the name that kept popping up into my mind was Jahan Dotson. We all took for granted after his, really solid rookie year that this guy was going to be a, like a foundational piece of our receiving core for the next 7-8 years. When you look at our receiving group, what we thought was a strength for the last 2 years could very, very quickly turn into a group that is bare in a lot of regards. I mean, McLaurin's still there, and McLaurin's a solid player.
Samuel's been the guy that has impressed this season, not Jahan Dotson.
Absolutely. And with Samuel, we don't know if he's going to be around long term. So behind McLaurin, what do you really have? Like, I really want to see Jahan Dotson become a focal point over this last month. He's been really, really inconsistent this year. And we need to have some level of confidence that going into next year, he's going to be a player that, we can rely on and that we can have some confidence in. So, in terms of, okay, we're playing out the string here, what do we want to see? I want him to reestablish some confidence in as a player, and I as a fan want to be confident that he can be a guy that we can lean on in the coming years, because he showed a lot of promise last year, and this year it's been largely a sophomore slump, so to speak.
It's so hard to judge in the context of how inconsistent this offense has been, and a young quarterback and an offensive line that doesn't protect. We do keep hearing that, and I've heard this from several places now, that our receiving core in general is not getting the separation, whatever the metric is that they use, the new age stats, that they're just not doing very well. And and again, that has to be at least a partial function of a semi-dysfunctional offensive scheme and a young quarterback, and the timing's just not quite there. As far as Dotson, I hear everything you guys are saying, and the drops in particular were really frustrating midseason. There were some terrible drops, but all I keep thinking about when I see this kid is he's still one of the crispest route runners that I've seen come out as a young player in a long time. And this is only year 2 of a rookie contract, right? I don't think he's going anywhere. I think he definitely gets at least one more season to show that route running ability in hopefully a more competent offense, maybe designed to spring him in space a little more than he's got right now. I think that kid's got all the talent in the world, and he may turn out to not be able to catch the ball, which would be a problem. But I think at least one more year on him for me.
Yeah, absolutely. I was not by any means suggesting that he should be a guy that we should, not consider keeping around. But I guess my point is that going into next year, we cannot afford to have questions surrounding him. He needs to go back to rookie form and being that player that we can have confidence in.
I agree.
Because beyond that, how many chances are you going to be giving him, right? Before you start looking elsewhere, I suppose.
Bates is the only tight end I would keep right now out of this current group. I think they need to move on from Logan Thomas. I don't think I've never understood the love for Cole Turner, because
I don't understand why they haven't gotten him on the field. I mean, all we heard about in preseason again this year was what a freak he is, making catches, and then he doesn't get on the field. So.
He's been banged up, but again, that's just right. We've already had the banged up tight ends who can't stay on the field. We've had them repeatedly. So I don't know.
No, it's hard to stand on the table for anyone in our tight end room right now. I agree with that.
To that point, there was a tackle that the entire preseason we heard he was dominating people. Was it Mason Brooks? Is that his name? He was just dominating one-on-ones, and I haven't seen that guy take a single snap. It's like, so what I don't understand a lot of it. But to the point, I just did a rough count. According to spotrac.com, we have 22 players set to be a free agent at the end of the season. 22. That's a third of the team of the players that are currently under contract, if you account for the 53-man roster and the injured reserve. So there's going to be a lot of looking around, and I tend to wonder, like, just looking at the rough numbers, we're going to lose 3 wide receivers potentially: Curtis Samuel, Jamison Crowder, and Byron Pringle. So you want to see who's behind Terry McLaurin. There ain't much behind him, because it's literally McLaurin, Dotson, and Brown guaranteed beyond this year, unless you bring one of those other guys back, or whatever. 4 linebackers.
We're going to have Marvin Harrison, so
apparently 4 linebackers: Khaleke Hudson, David Mayo, Dejon Harris, and Cody Barton. So now you're talking about the only linebacker like that we're even looking at that's a contributor that's under contract is Jamin Davis, that everybody wants to move on from. You know what I mean? So
I know that Curtis Samuel is getting a little long in the tooth. I would try hard to bring him.
I've been extremely happy with him,
because the guy just performs, man. Even I don't care how old he is, he's still getting it done on the field. So unless you got somebody better than him, I would try to lock him up.
Yeah, I would try to bring him back also. As far as guys that I really want to see, I really want to see Casey Toohill and KJ Henry. I want to see if we have a viable defensive end on this roster, because we can't go into 2024 without that. Like, it's going to be, if we have resources, but a free agent defensive end worth anything. I mean, Montez Sweat just signed a 4-year, $98 million deal. So that's the going rate, or similar, maybe not $24 million a year, but 18 is going to be the going rate for a starting caliber defensive end or the draft. And then a little deeper, I'd love to see some depth along the offensive line. I would love to see Mason Brooks play. I would love to see Chris Paul, if he can get, is he hurt? I can't remember now. Sadiq Charles.
So it's hard to keep track of all the IR guys. I
Yep.
tried looking today, but
Yeah. I don't think he is. I want to see Paul. I want to see, no, he's not listed. No, there's no injury designation. I want to see youth. Me personally, I want to see guys that are going to be a part of the long-term plans. I'm not interested in watching. If Logan Thomas doesn't catch another ball, God love him, what he's done, that's fine. I'm okay with that. You know what I mean? Like, because that doesn't give me anything. But
you wonder how that, if something like that gets communicated somehow, like, hey, Ron,
Play the kids.
yeah, I mean, why not though? Like, if nothing else,
I think
just
there's
to do right by
discomfort
them.
with having any kind of conversation that implies he's not going to be here. I think that would be very difficult. Who tells him that? Josh, or I don't
Eugene
know.
Chin.
Maybe.
What's interesting about this conversation is we've gotten 10 minutes into it and we haven't mentioned the quarterback yet. I have to bring it up, right? That's the elephant in the room. If we
Well,
Oh yeah.
if we end
I
up with
think
the
we
number
all-
4, well, wait a minute. Let me put it this
Yeah, go
way.
ahead.
If we end up with the number 4 pick and this new GM decides that Jaden Daniels is the future of this team and drafts him with the number 4 pick overall, I think a lot of people's heads are going to explode because everyone's in love with Sam, including me. But you know what? I could, it's maybe too early to do this. We'll be doing it all off season, but I could argue either side of that.
Mm-hmm.
Has Sam done enough for you guys to say definitively, nope, at that number 4 pick, we're taking the tackle or whatever, and Sam's the guy?
I've seen enough to where I want to ride that horse for one more season with the new staff before I move on. But keep in mind, the one thing people treat that debate like, oh, we're just going to shit can Sam, or I mean, Sam would still be on the roster.
Yeah, and probably the starter.
It doesn't preclude him from being the starter. It just hedging your bet. So I think that's an important part of it to keep in mind.
Which is what I would say. I mean, I won't bury the lead. My position on this is if whoever is making the draft pick and the coach think it, and we're not hopefully going to be up as high as number 4 again for the next 10 or 20 years. If that guy is sitting there and you don't have to trade up and spend capital to get him and they love him, you draft the guy. And then you let Sam and that guy sort it out over the next 2 or 3 years.
I'm on board with that. I think you have to be on board with it.
I hope so. And I hope that, I mean, I don't really care what the fans think. I want to know what the people in charge think. And if whoever comes in looks at the package that a guy like Daniels offers, or Bo Nix or whoever it is, and says, I got to have this guy to build my team around, I'm going to be okay with it. And I'm hoping that the fans give the kid a chance.
But if the new GM, I'll flip it on you, Mark. If the new GM has been watching Sam Howell play and says, this kid, if he had a decent offense, you weren't making them pass 60 times a game, and we fix some of the protection issues for him, he could be the next, he could be the next Russell Wilson type quarterback for like a decade.
Yeah. And that's the dream. That's the dream scenario right there.
Yep.
And then you've got those 5 picks in the top 100 and you start building Sam a line and you get him the weaponry and you build the defense and you're off and running. That's what I would like to see happen right there.
Yeah. I think that's probably most of us.
If I'm the GM, I'm with you. I'm probably drafting the best tackle I can get, as long as it's either alt or Fashanu. If one of those two guys is gone, then Harrison's probably the go-to. If for some reason, doubt all three of them, obviously, one of those two guys would be there because quarterbacks are going to go early, and you might have your pick of either one. But that's what I would do. I put a post on the board not that long ago talking about teams, and the mentalities might be shifting a little bit, because if you look at it, and I saw a really weird stat, different separately, but it ties this together, that apparently the only quarterback, there's only been one quarterback in the last like 25 years drafted number one, drafted in the top 5 by their drafting team to make it to the playoffs, and it was Matt Stafford. As weird as that was when he was in Detroit. But
The number one overall, you mean?
no, the top 5 quarterbacks with the original team. Maybe it was a Super Bowl. Might have been a Super Bowl. And it wasn't Stafford. It was somebody, but I don't know. I might have to go find it. Anyways, the point being is that if you go back and you look at the top 5 picks of quarterbacks, a lot of them with their drafting team don't make it to the playoffs. Now, the other argument to that is because they're getting picked by a bad team. So it's not exactly like in a guy like Hurts or Mahomes or somebody, or Roethlisberger later in the first round has a better chance of making the playoffs because the team's better, which is why they're picking later. But if you look at a lot of these teams, Kansas City with Mahomes, they had Alex Smith. They built the team around Alex Smith. Then they ended up finding their guy. Philadelphia had Carson Wentz. They built the team. The team was already strong, and then they got Hurts, and that's when they went to the next level. I wonder if that roster building is going to become the priority, and if it is, Sam is the perfect guy, in my opinion, to be the quarterback. You build your roster around. He's cheap. He's on a rookie deal, and he's capable, and he might ultimately still prove to be the guy. But get the roster in place, and then you start. If you're picking top 10 and you have a strong enough roster, you get your quarterback. They put you over the top, as opposed to taking the quarterback early, putting everything on their shoulders, and then trying to piecemeal things around that guy. And it slows their development, and you waste 1 to 2 years of their career anyways, because it takes you that long to build to then be able to put the pieces around them.
And we've got, especially for us, because we've got some key guys, including guys like John Allen and Terry McLaurin, which if it takes us 4 years to do a complete rebuild, especially because we drafted another quarterback and then we're having to start over with that kid, and we have fewer picks with which to build around him, then you're talking about the guys that you have that can really play aging out. Now they're past their prime, and it's kind of a nightmare worst case scenario, because we were supposed to be ready now. That's the thing, and we're not ready. So that's a bit of a problem. So anything we can do I still agree with Mark. If it's the GM's call, if he thinks that guy is there, then, and we've said it every year, Mark, we should be drafting a quarterback every year. And we are rarely in this rarefied top 5 draft pick thing. As depressed as we get, and as much as we criticize the team over the years, they've rarely been bad enough to get a top pick, unless they'd wanted to trade up for it. Anyway.
So we'll have a lot of time to talk about all this stuff. But speaking of Carson Wentz, guess who's backing up Matt Stafford on Sunday?
Carson Wentz.
Did Brett Rippon was their number 2, right? Did he get hurt?
I don't know.
Cut.
But I know that the number 3 is Stetson Bennett. So hopefully we don't run into those guys. Did you guys watch the Rams Ravens game at all by any chance?
Mm-hmm.
That was overtime game.
Yeah. Tell you what, the Rams are coming into this game on Sunday feeling pretty good about themselves. They went toe to toe with the second best team in the NFL on the road. Could have won that game quite easily. If you watch Stafford, he looked like a 25-year-old kid out there again, and he's winging it around to Cooper Kupp and Puka Nakua. Did I say it right? They lead the
who the hell is he? So they
He's
have
a
two
rookie
fifth-
who's killing it. is who
I
he
know
is.
they have 2 5th-round picks. One of them is Nakua, the wide receiver, who has over 1,000 yards already. He was
And
a fifth
catches
round.
everything.
He's a rookie, 5th-rounder. Kyron Williams, who's their running back, was a 5th-rounder from 2022, who's their lead rusher. So talk about drafting well with 5th-round picks.
And
That's
is the second leading game yards per game rusher in the NFL right now. The kid, he's good. He's
You talked
good.
about the Ravens game. They're coming up prior to that. They won the last 2 home games against Seattle and Cleveland. So it's not really a 3-game winning streak, but almost, considering how they lost to the Ravens. So
They started that game, and I thought this was interesting. They started that game with 9 straight runs, McVay called, and they went right down the field, had a 1st and goal at like the 9, and then threw it 3 times in a row incomplete and had to kick the field goal. And then when they came out on their second drive, they threw it like 5 times in a row. So we have no idea what we're going to see from McKay, but whatever it is, it's not going to be what we expect.
So we've
And
owned them historically, the Rams. I don't know if you guys know that. We're 14-5-1 at the Rams, wherever they've been located over the years. We're 24-12-1 all time. That may be the best record we have against any franchise, percentage-wise. So I'm just throwing that out there. It means nothing, but it sounds good. It makes me feel a little better.
I think one of the things that's interesting about this game, and just one of the things that caught my attention, is just how nice of a job that Sean McVay is doing with the Rams this year. If we all remember, last year they were 5-12. I think they lost like 9 of their last 11 games. And they had a really disappointing year, obviously, after coming off that Super Bowl victory. And I did a lot of reading in the offseason claiming that the Rams had one of the worst rosters in the NFL. So when you look at McVay, he's been doing a pretty solid job, and a pretty solid coaching job, doing more with less, so to speak. And it's a really stark contrast from what I see happening on our sideline, where our coaches just don't seem to have an answer. And, you know, in a lot of sports, I mean, talent usually wins out, but as we all know in the NFL, coaching is just as important. And, you know, you got the Rams there in the thick of it for that, you know, final 1 or 2 playoff spots in the NFC. And I think that's testament to just how good of a coach Sean McVay has been this year. So, I mean, we're going to have our hands full going up against, you know, one of the best in the business, in my opinion.
And Paul, just to kind of boost what you're saying, they started 3-6 after last season. They started 3-6. The Rams did, and just kind of like we did. It could have been 2-7. They had to pull off like a miracle overtime win against the Colts to get to 3-6. So they could be sitting at 2-7, and then they just turn it on, right? And the last month and a half has been a totally different story.
They started getting
Stark contrast to what we've done, right? From that same kind of
they started getting healthy again, for one thing, right? And Cup is back, and that just changes the entire dynamic of the offense. But yeah, Sean is like re-energized this year. I think he was talking last year about making noises about being done, right? He looks re-energized, and I was really struck by Matthew Stafford in that Ravens game. He looks as physically healthy and energetic and aggressive with the ball as I've seen him, well, since the Super Bowl run, certainly. And I don't think he always used to do this, but he is throwing off platform over and over. He's coming sidearm, he's coming 3/4. He's just like a kid having fun.
He looks healthy again.
Yeah, you can tell he's feeling good.
And you know what's likely helping him have a bit of a resurgence this year is the fact that their offensive line is playing pretty solid. They've given up the 4th fewest sacks in the NFL this year. And they have one player in particular who I'm really curious to watch this coming week, because obviously I don't see the Rams too often. But it was a guy that a lot of us were clamoring for in the draft last year, and that was Steve Avila. The kid has played over 870 snaps this year for the Rams. He's only accumulated 2 penalties. He's given up 2 sacks. He's been a really, really solid stabilizing force on the interior in their offensive line. And I can't help but think, what would things be like if we added a guy like Avila, or even a guy like Osiris Torrance? Back when we played at Buffalo, we talked about how Torrance just dominated Daron Payne and Jonathan Allen on the inside. I'm curious to see how Payne and Allen match up against Avila and how he holds up this coming week.
I remember you standing on the table for him in our draft coverage, my friend.
Yeah.
So we have a chance to have a little bit of a noteworthy record set against the Rams, and that is Sam Howell, if he has 13 completions, will move into the 3rd most completions in Washington franchise history in his first full season. And I know a lot of people will say, well, it's because we're throwing it constantly, but the key word is completion.
It's not attempt.
Lots of teams throw it a lot. They
Right.
don't set franchise records for completion. So I don't know who number 2. I have to assume Sammy Baugh might be the first number 1 guy. I'm just guessing. And maybe Jurgensen. I don't know.
It's interesting, but Sam only has the field has closed the gap on him. He still leads the NFL in attempts at 509, but he was like 50 something ahead 2 weeks ago. He is only like 18 ahead of Patrick Mahomes, who's number 2 with 487 right now.
Well, we hadn't had our bye yet.
That's true. That is true. And we only threw it 23 times this last game, which was like a half for most games for us.
So their defense, we've talked a lot about their offense. I don't think their defense is anything special. They're kind of middle of the roadish, maybe a little below average. I have them as at 18th against the yards overall, 20th against points, and they're pretty similar whether it's passing or rushing. They do not get to the quarterback much. They have fewer sacks than we do, 29 on the season, and they are a little bit better on the turnover ratio. They're at -1 on total turnovers, and we are -10. So they must be getting some fumbles along the way, because it's not coming from, they don't get a lot of interceptions and they're not sacking the quarterback a lot. But anyway, so that's kind of the good news, is we should be able to protect Sam a little bit better, knock on wood. And
who's
on the other side of the line coming across, right?
Well, Donald he'll get his.
Mm-hmm.
He'll get his. And hopefully we'll be rolling away from him and trying to mitigate that a little bit. Sam needs to have himself a bounce back game, right? He every time he's got a bad game so far, he's been able to bounce back. I'm not saying he was bad against Miami. He just was, the team was overmatched. He had no shot, but it would do well for him to have a good solid game again. Let's not have a pick 6. Those are getting old. By the way, flashing back to Miami, when that pick 6 happened, my immediate thought wasn't that Sam made a mistake, which I mean he did, but my immediate reaction was they knew exactly what was coming.
He said on that screen that it was one of those plays where he had to get the ball out immediately, and I mean the way he phrased it, it sounded like he didn't even really look. He just turned and threw the screen, and he said I didn't expect the defensive end to be there.
The guy knew. The guy, either he just decided to not rush the passer and just cut into that lane, but it's almost like they knew exactly what was coming.
Well, he got interviewed, and I think if I remember correctly, I heard him say there was a key on Wiley, and he instantly knew the way Wiley moved and was set, what play was coming.
Yeah.
Like they could see it coming based on what like Wiley's alignment mixed with his first step mixed with a lot of whatever factors They knew what was coming.
which is what you expect at this level, right? That NFL players have studied to that level and their coaches get them prepared to that level. It will be nice, and I'm going to go ahead and give us the benefit of the doubt and assume that we will have that again someday. It'll be nice to see a team that looks prepared, right, and can handle itself on a professional level, which seems like a long time since we've had that here. So how do we think it's actually going to work out on Sunday, fellas?
I don't think it's as bad as Miami, but I don't think we come away with the win. We're in LA. It's a 4:05 kick. It's an odd time. I think we put up a fight. But I think ultimately the defense, I think Sam Howell probably gets sacked 4 or 5 times. I can see 27-17 Rams.
What you
I
got,
think
bro?
I think that I don't think their defense is particularly good. Even with Darnold, they have not been a sack producing team. I mean, they're averaging like 2 sacks a game, so maybe 3 at the worst. But we play better on the road. I keep saying that, and and maybe it's not that we play better on the road. We're just a terrible home team. I don't know. One of the might be true, but I think Sam's gonna have one of his best games. I'd really like to see him have a breakout game where he's had a couple of games where he looked really impressive in the context of being a first year starter, but I'd really like to see him have a breakout game. But I think they're going to keep it close, and I think we'll probably get edged out like 31-27. But I think Hal's going to have, as Mark alluded to, I think Hal's going to play one of his better games.
Paul, what do you got?
Brother Paul?
I think this is going to be one of those games where we lose pretty. And what I mean by that is
Philly, like the Philly games.
Yeah, the Philly game, the Seattle
Seattle
game. Yeah, we have a really solid performance from Sam Howell, one of those performances that reminds us that, hey, this can be a guy for us. This can be someone we can build around. But in the end, you have a team in Rams that has a lot more to play for at this point. They're battling for their playoff lives. They're one of the top 10 teams in the NFL in terms of red zone touchdown percentage. They're really good on third down. I think they're 10th or 11th in the league. And those two stats worry me when you're facing a defense as poor as Washington. And I think those kinds of things can ultimately make a difference in the game. I can see it being a high scoring game, kind of along the lines of what you're saying, John. I'll say that the Rams are going to win by a field goal. I'll say 27-24.
I think it's going to be 2 games. I think our team is actually going to come out pretty well. I think Ron will have the defense a little more organized and might surprise Stafford a couple of times. We might actually even create a turnover, which I can't remember the last time we did. And I think we'll be in a game, at least for the half. But I also think that as the game goes on, the fact that they're playing for something, the Rams, and we really aren't, if things start to go bad, it might fall apart later. I think for some reason I keep thinking Antonio Gibson's going to have a big game. I don't know where that comes from. I just want to put it on record. I do think in the end, though, there'll be just enough. The Rams have just enough. We're going to have a tough time containing their receivers. Our secondary they're going to give up explosives, and I think they're going to give up 1 or 2 in the second half that make the difference. And it'll end up being like I'm feeling like 27-20. I think we'll get our 20, but I don't think we're keeping them under 27. And brother Chris, who's not with us tonight, weighed in. His prediction is that the defense does improve a bit, and Howell ends his streak of pick sixes, which is good. But the Rams 33, Washington 20. So it's been a while since anybody predicted a Washington win around here. And by the
And-
way, we have to say it, right? Isn't that still the best case scenario? We want to lose pretty 35-34. It's been a great game. We lose in overtime.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. For the long-term health of the team, I think
Yep.
we can all see
Pretty-
how that's the better benefit. But
Big difference between the number 4 pick and the number 5 pick in the draft. There is.
well, we got a lot of help this past weekend with
Yeah. Yeah,
the
but
Giants winning, the Titans winning, the
the
Patriots
Cardinals
winning.
probably aren't going to beat San Fran, and who else? And the Patriots are at the Chiefs, so I don't think we're going to get any help there this week.
Yeah. All right,
Anyway,
fellas. Always a pleasure. It's been fun. Paul just cut his camera off.
you guys rock, man.
All right, gentlemen.
Have a
Appreciate
good
you.
one, guys.